All right, students. So today we are in fact going to talk about Northern Coniferous Forest. So pay attention to the screen. Look at the image in the back. You can actually see a kind of a view of what some of the trees may in fact look like. Now, Northern Coniferous Forest, in terms of understanding this, we must take into consideration certain key factors. First of all, we must talk about the location or the locality. All right, where can Northern Coniferous Forest be found? All right. Secondly, we must take into consideration the climatic condition because the locality or the location would in fact influence the climatic effect. All right, because lines of latitude, as we know fully well, will influence the kind of atmospheric condition which would in fact exist. Thirdly, we will be talking blatantly of the characteristics of Northern Coniferous Forest, and by extension, we'll be talking about as well the different types of trees which may constitute this particular vegetative class. All right. So if you look carefully on the screen, the word northern symbolizes it is actually above the equator. To be specific, this area in green is very far from the equator. It is completely out of the equator, right? It is totally not associated with tropics. So technically, given the location, this region here that is covered in green, northern coniferous forests can technically be found in temperate regions or temperate zones, all right, which roughly ranges between around say 35 even 40 to an estimated 60. In some instances, they may in fact be a little bit higher or lower. These are just rough estimates, all right. They may also be, if you look at the two continental regions or the different shaded regions here, this circled area encompasses certain parts of Alaska, certain parts of Canada, and also certain ranges within the North American continent. All right. Now, that being said, we could also take into consideration in Eurasia, which encompasses certain parts of Europe, Scandinavia, Russia, and stuff like that. These particular areas, even certain fringes in the northern part of China, as well as the northern fringes of Mongolia. All right, so these particular regions encompass largely the temperate, or I should say, northern coniferous forest in the Eurasian part of the world. Now, let us look closely at the location of these particular areas, right? Given the latitudinal location, right, these areas do receive obviously less insolation from the sun in comparison to equatorial region. However, the winter periods are in fact very distinctive. As a matter of fact, the temperature conditions experienced in these particular areas during the winter period can actually be sub-zero or below freezing point, which is technically below 0 degrees Celsius, to an estimated, like say, minus 40 degrees Celsius. Their summer periods, on the other hand, can in fact be relatively warm. Right? And when I say warm, not warm as the tropics, but I'm saying warm, averaging approximately 10 degrees Celsius, in some instances reaching as high as 20 degrees Celsius, right? Which is technically very warm in comparison to the dynamic cools or cold, right, conditions experienced primarily during the winter. All right. Now, it is sufficient to say that given this distinctive warmth in the summer and also the distinctive cold during the winter periods will be associated largely with snow, which is that form of precipitation which would encompass that area because of the very sub-zero temperatures. During the summer periods, however, right, the moisture receipt would be significant. As a matter of fact, students, the moisture receipt in these particular areas can sometimes range, depending upon the location, can sometimes range from an estimated 700 to approximately 1,000 millimeters per annum. All right, that is referring mainly within the summer. Or in some instances, it could actually reach close to 1,500 millimeters per annum, which is a significant amount of rainfall to be received. And as a result of that, the vegetation types would be influenced greatly by that distinctive moisture receipt. Now, as we mentioned earlier, right, in terms of understanding the characteristics of northern coniferous forest, we must actually leap ahead into the type of trees that may in fact exist in this particular region. All right. Now, students, look carefully on the screen. You can actually see these types of regions, this type of vegetation, sorry, would be associated with what we call pine trees or pine cone trees. We also have spruce, right? We have firs, different types of firs, and also, in some instances, we have larches, right? These are, in fact, very unique vegetative examples, right, which may exist or encompass this type of forest. Okay, so let us just take a couple seconds and just look at these particular trees again once more, right? These are in fact the pine cone trees, right? This is referring to the spruce, the different characteristics and different types of spruce, right? We have firs, right? And we also have, again, like I indicated, larches. Now, students, we can obviously see that these particular trees, right, they are in fact completely different from many of the trees which exist in tropical environments. All right, they are relatively tall, yes, but in terms of the foliage, look at the actual shape of these trees. When we did tropical rainforest, we mentioned that they have huge canopies and whatnot. These trees, on the other hand, they do not have major or distinctive canopies per se. They are more triangular shaped, the majority of them, that is. All right. In addition to this, we must also take into consideration that out of all of these, well, these tree species, pine cones, spruce, and firs, these are what we call evergreen tree species. All right. Pine cones, spruce, and ferns are largely referred to as evergreen tree species, primarily because of the fact that they remain green throughout the year. All right. Larches, on the other hand, they are in fact very much distinctive. They are said to be deciduous trees. And what do I mean by deciduous trees? During perhaps seasonal changes, right? During different times of the year, different months of the year, they will actually develop different coloration, different characteristic. For example, these are in fact some examples of larches in certain parts of the world, especially in Europe and whatnot. You'll find a lot of these trees in Europe and stuff like that, and they will in fact change distinctively, especially when there is change from month to month, because the seasons will automatically change. During the period of autumn, all right, these particular trees develop these characteristics, and the leaves change from a kind of greenish coloration to somewhat of a kind of yellowish color. All right, very, very bright colors as such. Okay, a very, very important fact that we must take into consideration. If you look at the background here, we can see these are in fact mountainous regions. The continent of North America, as well as Europe and Asia, right? Those continents per se, the northern hemisphere is largely associated with elevated areas. These particular trees, referring to larches, firs, uh, um, spruce or even pine cone trees, they can actually range roughly, right, from around sea level to an estimated, say, approximately close to like 20 or even 18,000 feet up into the air. All right, well, just a little bit less, around 15 to 16,000 feet above sea level. All right. Now, class, remember, the higher you go up into the atmosphere, as you ascend above sea level, temperatures can actually depreciate. All right, temperatures can actually go down. So at those particular altitudes, like say roughly around 15,000 feet, all right, above sea level, that is in fact significantly high. All right, so around 15 to 16,000 feet there, roughly, those trees can be well adapted to very, very cold conditions. All right, given the fact that temperature varies at a rate of an estimated 6.5 degrees Celsius for every 1,000 meter, all right, into the atmosphere or up into the atmosphere, that is. Now, referring to the characteristics of the leaves of these particular trees, if you look carefully on this particular image on the screen, this is in fact referring to pine cone trees, and they have basically a needle-like characteristic of their leaves. All right, the same thing was applicable to spruce. All right, look at the actual leaf characteristics of spruce, firs, right, or fir leaves, all right, of these particular trees, and then we have like larches and stuff like that. Look at the leaves. They are very narrow. All right. Now, students, these leaves are not broad at all. These needle-like leaves, together with the pine cone characteristics, they are very small. They have a very small surface area. They are not broad at all, at all, at all. All right. And there is, in fact, a reason for that. Given the cold climatic condition, all right, these leaves are, in fact, well adapted to such a cold. As a matter of fact, the most significant precipitation type associated with these particular areas would, in fact, be snowfall, given the fact that they experience a lot of uh, well, snow, especially during the winter, when the winter period is in fact very, very cool. Now, snow, as you can see in the image here, this little insert here, it can actually settle on the surface of the leaves, and this will provide a weight. If these particular leaves were very, very broad, they would be subjected to breakage. All right. So snow is in fact very cold precipitation. All right, and it can have a weight. On top of that, too, class, the needle-like leaf structures, all right, are very important in terms of minimizing moisture loss. All right, and that is where the fact of the matter is that these particular leaves are in fact said to be possessing what we call a waxy cuticle. And the waxy cuticle actually prevents moisture loss. Why is that? Because in such conditions, when temperatures are in fact very, very low, it is often associated with very dry conditions. And as a result of that, cold temperatures, and I'm talking about cool temperatures below 0 degrees, especially during the harsh winter periods, even descending below that, say an estimated 40 minus 40 degrees Celsius, very, very cold. All right, that means moisture is trapped in the form of a solid state, in the form of either, well, snow isn't really solid, but you understand what I mean. But solid either in the form of ice, it is not in a liquid, moist, fluid form. All right, so that means moisture loss can be highly significant, especially when the winter periods are in fact very, very harsh. And the waxy cuticle of these needle-like leaves will provide the ideal characteristic for that. All right. In addition to this, class, given the needle-like leaves, as I mentioned earlier, they possess basically small surfaces. And these small surfaces, let us do a comparison. The broad leaves primarily associated with the tropical forest. Look how broad this particular leaf is. In comparison to the needle-like leaves associated with the Northern Coniferous forest, all right, encompassing boreal forest as well as temperate coniferous forest as well. Look at these needle-like leaves. They are they have small in nature. This means that the broad nature of this particular leaf would not be able to withstand the weight of the snow which may rest on top of these leaves, especially during the winter period. What happens is that moisture, perhaps during the summer period, together with the presence of the cold conditions, which will create perhaps ice, or even in some instances, the weight of the snow. These leaves, the broad leaves, will be subjected to breakage. Hence is the reason why the coniferous forest possesses a very distinctive adaptation. All right, adaptation, which is very important. All right, because in the absence of these needle-like leaves, if they were perhaps broad, like those in the tropical rainforest, they will be subjected to breakage. All right, so the broad leaves are in fact not practical. All right, it is not an adaptation to deal with such cold conditions, the specific type of precipitation, different time of the year. So these needle-like leaves are in fact very, very unique. All right, so class, in a nutshell, I hope this was actually very beneficial and easy to understand. As a matter of fact, if you in fact have any questions so far, you can feel free to let me know. Just message me, whatever the case may be. Okay, class, keep good. Bye bye.